Thank you for tuning in to Exeter TV. Exeter TV is the town's public and government access channels, available on Comcast Channels 6 and 22. Channel 6 is your channel. If you have an idea for a program, want to host your own talk show, or submit a film, we're here to get your content on television. On Channel 22, we bring you live and replay coverage of government meetings and other town updates. A third channel, Blue Hawk Media, is operated by SAU 16 and can be found on Channel 8, with all your school sports, events, and meetings. You can watch Exeter TV online at exeternh.tv, Apple TV, and on Roku. Find us on social media for extra content. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and hit the bell to get notified about live streams and new content. Tune in to our platforms every other Friday to watch the Exeter Biweekly Report with recaps of recent events, updates from town departments, and messages from nonprofits in your area. If you head to our website, exeternh.tv, we invite you to sign up to our newsletter to receive monthly updates about new content, upcoming meetings, and more. We'd like to thank you for taking the time to watch Exeter TV and hope that you tune in to our other content as well.
Call the February 11th Exeter Conservation Commission meeting to order, please. Start with the introduction of the members. To my right,
Nick Campion.
Trevor Matera.
Andrew Koff.
Dave Short.
Connor Madison.
Keith Whitehouse.
Valerie Fanger.
Bill Campbell, alternate.
Kyle Welch said he will be slightly late, and he will be here.
Dan Chartrand, Select Board Rep to the Conservation Commission.
And Kristen Murphy, Conservation and Sustainability Planner for the town.
Thank you.
Don Clement here on Zoom.
Oh, I'm sorry. And then Don Clement on Zoom.
Evening, everybody.
Hi, Don.
Is there any public comment that is not pertaining to an agenda item? Okay, then we'll jump into the first one. It's a review of wetland conditional use permit for a mixed-use neighborhood development project at 76 Portsmouth Avenue and Haven Lane. Tax map 65, lot 118. Plans and supplemental information revised and submitted January 31st. And I believe Paige Libby from Jones and Beach is here to speak to that.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Again, Paige Libby with Jones and Beach for the record. Also with me tonight are Jim Gove with Gove Environmental, as well as Michael and Jenna Green from Green and Company, and John O'Neill on behalf of the development team. So as you stated, we were here last month. This is for 76 Portsmouth Ave, which is the current Fisher Auto Parts property. And we heard some concerns from the commission about the amount of buffer impact with our previous proposal. So we've made some revisions to the plans in order to hopefully address some of those concerns. Get the pointer out here. So the revisions that we made were the building that was previously here up against Wetland B, which is what we heard were the biggest concern from the commission with its proximity to Wheelwright Creek. We've actually moved that across the road into what was previously green space, so away from the buffer. There will be some green space in this area behind the mail house just for recreation, but in our opinion, having green space there is better than having impervious surface. And we've also reduced the overall impact within the limited use buffer in that area. The other revisions that we made were we pulled buildings 2, 4, and now buildings 6 closer to the road. So those buildings no longer have parking in front of them. Instead, they have parking across the road, which is outside of the buffer. So you'll see parking spaces here, here, and here for those 3 buildings. So that also helped us to reduce the overall buffer impact. So our 2 goals with this were really to reduce the overall buffer impact, but also specifically to reduce the buffer impact within the limited use buffer. And we did put together this exhibit plan, which is sheet EX3 in the set that we submitted to you, which was to show the overall impacts, both within the limited use buffer as well as the 75-foot parking and structure setback. And what we really wanted to depict here was that the overall impervious impacts within the parking and structure setback are pretty minimal compared with the temporary impacts. So even though in the conditional use permit application, we have to list out all of the impacts, including the temporary as well as the permanent, in the 2 separate buffers, the things that we were most concerned with updating were the impervious surfaces, so the parking and the structure within the parking and structure setback. So that's what we've tried to depict on this sheet, EX3, and it updated the color coding as well to try to separate out the temporary and the permanent impacts. So a couple other concerns that came up at the last meeting were the potential vernal pools on the property. So we did also include a letter from the wetland scientist for both delineation dates, and also a separate letter indicating that he did not find any vernal pools on the property during his visit, which I believe was April 3rd of 2024. And then the last thing that we discussed at the last meeting was the culvert that crosses the property, or crosses the 72 Portsmouth Ave property just beyond our property line on the Thirsty Moose. We were able to get in touch with the property owner there, so we've been working on getting an agreement in place with them to replace that culvert. So they are very willing to work with us on that. And that's something that we'll be working out with the planning board as well. And then lastly, we included a new conditional use permit criteria update. Most of the criteria are very similar to what we previously submitted. The only one that changed pretty substantially is criteria 2, which talks about the avoidance and minimization, because we were able to shift this building, which is now building 7, to really make use of all of the area on this property that's outside of the buffer and is accessible from the accesses without crossing too many of the wider wetlands. So that was really the main update to the conditional use criteria. And that's all I have. I don't know if anyone else wants to add anything, Jim, or if we can answer any questions that you might have.
Any on anybody on the board have a comment?
Yeah, I just didn't do the math. Is it the same amount of buildings? Or was that reduced as well?
So one other change that we made that I actually just forgot to mention, we split this building into 2, and that was simply because in order to kind of work with the Thirsty Moose and kind of fix that drainage situation that's going on, we actually shifted this crossing slightly southwest, which will allow us to have the sidewalk go down the property line. That will also work better for the phasing of the project, and it actually also reduced the overall wetland impact at that crossing. So in order to do that, we split that building into 2, but it is the same number of buildings otherwise. So it's 1 additional building, but the same number of units.
So there's 17 buildings, is that right?
Sorry, what was that?
17 buildings?
17 total? No, it's 34 units,
34
townhouse units, yeah.
okay.
Yep,
And
and
each
10
of
buildings.
those is a regular house, unit,
Each unit is a townhouse,
townhouse with 2 bedrooms?
3 bedrooms.
3 bedrooms, all right. And is that what's meant by mixed use? I'm not sure that term.
Yeah, so the mixed-use component is really in the front building, but it's also on the overall development. So because there's a commercial component with the front building, it meets the definition of the mixed-use neighborhood district.
Are any of these workforce housing?
Yeah, so 10% of the total units will have to be affordable housing.
Affordable housing?
Yeah, and because we're phasing the project, it'll be 10% in the rear of the project with the townhouses and 10% of the front. So they won't be like 10% of just the front type of thing.
So I thought in one of your letters you said something about land being conserved. Could you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so it's actually not shown on this plan, but there's a large portion of upland on this side of the property. And actually, I'll switch back to the first sheet because I think that shows the whole thing. So this large portion of upland, as well as buffer, will be undisturbed, which is behind these commercial buildings that are on Portsmouth Ave currently.
And I'm curious why that portion? Like why not the rest of it there?
Oh, like in this area?
Yeah.
So this portion really is not very accessible. There's a very steep slope going up from the wetland to this kind of flat area that's behind these commercial buildings. So it wouldn't really make sense for us to kind of cross that wetland to get out to that space to utilize it.
Right. And what's the square footage on that, do you know?
I don't know that number off the top of my head. I may have that on one of my
Okay.
plans.
And are you working with SELT or somebody?
We are not, no, but the condominium declarations wouldn't allow anybody to disturb that area in the future. So we weren't thinking we would permanently like conserve it for conservation space, but it wouldn't be disturbed in the future.
So,
What would prevent it excuse me, from being used?
The condominium declarations, so the condominium declarations will read that the condo association can't disturb certain areas going forward. So similarly to having the wetland buffer plaques along the tree line behind the units as well, like the members of the association wouldn't be able to just go cut trees wherever they want, because that would go against the
So that
declarations.
can't be changed at all?
Correct.
Not like some things, I won't get into that.
Well, so the condominium association members couldn't vote to change that at some point? If they all got together? I'm just curious.
That I don't know the answer to. We can also put a deed restriction on it as well, in addition to the declarations. So that would certainly prevent them from doing that.
All right. And again, that middle area, you're not at this point going to include that because might something happen to that in the future? Kind of
Sorry,
that-
which area are you referring to?
You're saying you're going to conserve kind of that right-hand area, but not the land a little bit to the left of that? And I'm just, if you could explain a little bit more about why that wouldn't be included.
Yeah, we can include that as well. That
Okay.
area also would not be disturbed. We do have trails proposed through there
Okay.
for access by the residents, but there would be no other clearing or anything of that sort in that area.
Okay.
Would those trails be public access or residents only?
They would be residents only.
So the folks that live in the neighborhood behind would not have access to those?
We weren't thinking that they would, just because it can become a liability for the homeowners association, but we could certainly talk to our legal representative about that and see if it's possible.
Thank you.
You want to put,
If it's helpful to add page, New Hampshire has landowner liability laws that protect property owners who do allow recreation on their property. It was established to promote, hunting on private land, et cetera. And so when they do look at that, maybe take a look at the landowner liability laws.
Yeah, we can look into that.
and the garage is underneath the house, the garage, is that a one-car garage underneath?
Those would be 2-car garages for
garages.
each unit on the first floor, yes. And then there's a small room behind each of the garages.
And where did the play area go, or the recreation area? You put a house in there.
Yeah, so there's some recreation space in here where this green area is shown behind the mail house. And then we also have some small areas kind of mixed in throughout around the buildings.
Is this the same amount of porous pavement, or have you added to that from the last time we saw it?
It's the same amount.
It is, okay.
We had to shift some of it around a little bit just because some of the driveways that were removed were porous, so we had to move it around a little bit, but the
Okay.
square footage is the same.
And then for your January 31st letter, I have a question about that last bullet. It says, total disturbance has been reduced in the limited use buffer by 67%, but should that be 6.7%?
So that was 67% of the amount that we had previously. So if you look at the limited use table, which is on the second page of that letter, we have the 18,800 square feet of disturbance.
Right.
That was from the January 13th plan. And then we're going down to 6,350 square feet. So of the 18,800 square feet, it was reduced by 67%
Okay.
of that number.
So, sorry, that's my last question. Let somebody else talk. So your current total permanent buffer usage is how many square feet now?
Permanent is, let's see here. 15, sorry. Yeah, so we have two separate numbers. We have the two tables.
Right.
So are you looking for both?
Yes.
Or, okay, so the limited use buffer, we have 5,100 square feet. And then within the parking and structure setback, we have 22,900 square feet.
Thank you.
And some of that is existing.
Correct. Yeah, about 3,000 square feet of it is previously permanently disturbed, so it's previously impervious surfaces. And then of that, we actually included our porous pavement in that calculation, just because it's a little unclear in the ordinance, because it reads parking and structure. So it's unclear if we can count porous pavement as part of temporary impacts. So we actually did count the porous pavement as part of that disturbance as well, even though that will end up being porous surface. So that is about a little over 2,000 square feet as well.
Where you remove that old building, looks like temporary buffer impact, that green. Would that just be maintained as like a lawn area or?
Where we shifted the proposed 2-unit.
Yeah,
Yeah, so that would be just lawn space essentially for the residents to use to walk their dogs or whatever it may be. Just recreation area. We'll have probably some benches or something in that space.
Where is there any space out? I mean, there is that one space, but if you've got 50, what did we say, how many units? 50, four
34.
people, you got a couple hundred people out there. Do they have any space to put a grill, to put a sandbox, or anything like that?
So the declarations would speak to what they can have behind their unit. Typically, grills would be allowed, so they can put that behind their unit within the grass space. But sandboxes, that would just be in the declarations.
And a whole
Yeah,
lot
and
of-
they also have the decks that they can use as their outdoor space.
Not a whole lot of room behind some of those buildings.
Yeah, so most of them, I mean, if they have decks out there, if they have grills out there, they'll be close to the units. In most condo associations, you wouldn't be able to utilize a large lawn space behind the condominium.
You mentioned the mail house. Is that building 4? I wasn't quite clear on where the mail house reference was.
It's really small on this plan, but it's right here. It's just a small structure,
Okay.
essentially with like the cluster mailbox units with a roof over it.
Got it.
And it has like a paved pull-off there as well. So that the residents as well as the mail delivery person can pull off and deliver the mail.
So of concern to the residents is the issue of drainage and having their sump pumps continuing to run. So familiarize me with what's physically being done to assuage their fears of that.
Yeah, so the first thing is that as part of the development, we need to comply with not only Exeter's stormwater regulations, but also the state for alteration of terrain. So we need to provide a drainage analysis that shows that we're decreasing or matching the existing flows of stormwater through the property, even with the proposed development. That's all reviewed by your engineer as well as the state engineer. And then secondly, which was a big topic of discussion last time, this wetland all drains to a culvert that goes across the Thirsty Moose's property that's currently not operational. So part of this proposal is going to be to upgrade that culvert in order to help drain that area out further down into this wetland.
Thank you.
We received a letter from an abutter, and I'm kind of having trouble reconciling this too. And questioning where the idea of hardship comes from and whether it's self-imposed or not. It really comes down to a question of density. How would you answer that?
So conditional use permits, to my knowledge, don't have a hardship criteria necessarily. There's certain criteria in the conditional use permit that we do need to meet, but hardship isn't necessarily one of them. So for every development project like this, there's also an economic component to it. So we need to review how many units we need to build in order to even make the project economically viable. So that's one of the things that we look at as part of the project. And of course, we do what we can to make the project work as well. And we also need to comply with the criteria outlined in the conditional use permit. But it's not like a variance where you need to prove that there's a hardship necessarily.
No, but that so-called hardship is what's driving the buffer impacts. So again, I'm just having a little problem wrapping my head around that one, but.
Yeah, I mean, there's really no, today, there's no sites that are open and available for development like there was, 40 years ago.
Oh, I know.
So we have to,
Yeah.
we have to find ways to work around the wetlands that are there.
Yep.
So we do that as best we can. And part of that is to condense the development into one area versus maybe, crossing the wetland and utilizing other uplands, which may create more disturbance. So it makes more sense to keep the development all condensed into one central section versus, disturbing more wetlands in order to make use of buffer, areas outside of the buffer on other parts of the property.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Well, for the people on our committee who did the walkthrough, I'm kind of interested in that wetlands A, because that's where the buildings are right now. So that's the one on the left, lower. That's where the buildings are on the buffer. And if anybody who on our committee did that walkthrough would like to speak to that, but maybe not.
Speak, while I was there, speak to it in what way?
Well,
Same.
you said it really is wet. It looks, it's, I guess that's my question.
Yeah, from what I could tell, there's certainly a water body there.
Yeah.
It's holding, it when we were out there, it is holding quite a bit of water.
Okay.
Supposedly because of that culvert there that is just not functional right now. It's really being
Right.
held back from draining. So increasing the drainage to that entire system would absolutely have an impact on that wetland, in that it wouldn't habitually hold water to that extent. It would still be the low point on the property and water would still be running there, but it would also, have passage to wetland B and then into the wheelwright system.
Yeah.
Yeah, when that pampas grass folded, it clogged the drainage pipe.
Yeah.
And they had dug it out earlier in the late summer, and it had drained down some. But then, once that died off for the season and folded because of the wind, it clogged it, and that's what appears to be a body of water at this time. If they replace that culvert along the back of the Thirsty Moose, that should help a lot with that.
Yeah, we have some photos. I didn't bring them tonight, but I was just looking through our photos from the summer. I was, getting ready for the meeting and the submission, and we do have photos of that completely empty from when they dug it out. And there's a pile of material there. You can see when somebody came in and dug it out to clean that out, and it did drain. So that was completely empty I think it was around September of this year.
Valerie, did that get to your
Yeah, thank you.
question? Okay.
Yeah, thanks. I didn't mean to put you on the spot.
No, it's fine.
No.
Yeah. So, just to kind of look at the numbers again, and I'm sorry. So you're permanently impacting what percentage of the wetland buffer on a percentage basis?
So we have 3.4% in the limited use buffer. And then 33.8% within the parking and structure setback, and that's just of the buffer that exists today. So if you add those together, it's 38.2. That was already impacted. I don't have the percentage that's already impacted, but of that amount, 3,000 of it is already previously impacted.
Thank you.
And then of that also is a little over 2,000 square feet is porous.
Okay. Thank you for that.
Yeah, I think you did a good job modifying the design based on our feedback last time, I guess. One of the comments of having that open space, the way it was previously, was to maintain a distance to the adjacent properties and houses. So you're now, instead of encroaching on the wetland buffers, you're more encroaching on the neighborhood. I just would acknowledge that. But to me, that's a trade-off that certainly we don't comment on proximity to adjacent neighborhoods. We are concerned here with buffer impacts. I guess the only other thing I think that could be done here to piggyback on Dave's comment is the size overall size of the number of units. So I don't know if you considered or had discussions about reducing the scope of the townhouses. Was that talked about?
Yeah, that was certainly talked about, because when we first started this project, we had over 120 units. I think we had 124 total units. So, after coming to the Conservation Commission, as well as the Planning Board, and hearing some of the concerns from the boards, as well as the abutters, we made some pretty substantial revisions to the project in order to reduce the scale, and in that, reducing the density significantly from that 120 plus units to 70. So in that, we had discussions about how many units we really need in order to make the project work.
Uh-huh. And this is where you're at for that.
Correct.
Still looks like a lot of houses jammed into one spot without a whole lot of room around it.
Yep.
And another 400 people in there, something like that. Take 51 units times 4 people, 200 units, 200 people. Got to keep my math.
Yeah, I agree,
34
but
units?
it's
Said-
sort of not our decision on the density and
No, it's-
design.
Right.
That's not really, that's more of a planning board or other.
True, but it's being shoved into the buffers in the wetlands.
Right.
That's my concern.
All right.
Can I say something, or do I need to?
Yeah, come to the mic.
Yeah, please.
I think you can,
Can you-
Michael Green, Green and Company.
Thank you.
I think you can always look at a project and say, reduce, 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 but we originally had 80 units in this space. We've reduced it, we've tried to work as much as possible. I mean, the alternative is 50-foot buildings, and they're not having as much of an impact. But we did this in an effort to reduce the amount of bodies, the amount of physical units, the amount of physical housing. So we are trying to work with you, we've been trying to work with you, and I know it would be wonderful if this stayed a nice forested area, but that's not to be. So I just want you to understand, we're not trying to be difficult, we're trying to work with you, but there's a point where it has to have an economic viability as well. So just wanted to say that. I think it's important to know.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. Is there any public comment? Name and address, please. Thank you.
I'm Susan Taylor, and I live at 30 Haven Lane. And I'm going to hope it might be a conservation question, because Originally, we had two ways of getting into this project, off of Portsmouth Avenue and off of Haven Lane. It's no longer any access onto Portsmouth Avenue, which means everything comes in and out from Bonnie Drive to Haven Lane into the development. Now, you do have some wetlands that are backing up to the auto parts. Is there any way of another exit or entrance onto Portsmouth Avenue to alleviate 34 times 2 cars?
Unfortunately,
Is it a,
that's a planning board question.
but it is a wetland question.
It
Is
would-
there a
it
wet,
would- it would
would
be-
it go over the wet, is there any way to get around the wetlands to make another entrance
It would
onto
become
Portsmouth
a,
Ave?
it would become a wetlands issue if it were proposed.
It was proposed in the beginning,
Right.
and now it is no
No,
longer.
I completely understand your concerns. But
'Cause it's not just-
At the moment, it falls outside of our jurisdiction to.
Okay, so when we come back, I'll discuss it at that. Because it's not just 68 cars, maybe.
Oh,
You've got UPS, you've got FedEx, you've got your maintenance, you have your people who are going to be doing your mowing. You have so many vehicles that are going to be coming in and out. For that little section, we were hoping to alleviate part going one way and part going another, but now it's all being flooded onto one.
Right.
So I'll mention it.
Yes,
Thank you.
okay, thank you.
Was it described to us that there was a decision made because there would actually be traffic cutting through that way and they didn't want cut-through traffic? I think that's what was,
When it got divided into two, it got taken totally away.
There was concern when we first presented to the planning board about cut-through traffic coming from Portsmouth Ave into the neighborhood.
Right.
So that was part of the reason why we separated the two developments. And the front building would only have access off Portsmouth Ave. So it's the 34 units that have access to Haven Lane. The front building with the mixed use would only access Portsmouth Ave. And the chairman's correct that if we were to propose an access between the two sides of the development, it would become a larger wetland crossing. It would become a pretty substantial size wetland crossing in that area. So we would need to get your feedback and approval before we go forward with that.
Right.
so that was a TRC comment. That was an edit that came out of TRC, maybe?
I think it was actually either conceptual during the planning board meeting, for the
Conceptual.
conceptual design during the planning board.
Correct. Yep.
Okay.
When I watched the meeting, there was a fear that it would become a new Green Hill Ave. The second kind of with traffic cutting through to avoid Portsmouth Ave and the light.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's why that was eliminated.
Anybody else?
Brian O'Brien, 20 Haven Lane. I sent you basically the same packet that I sent you last time because this plan is, for me, deja vu from last time. We still have a significant amount of buffers, and in the CUP application, there's a statement that says something to the effect of, why do you have to do this? And the reason really is not there for why we have to do this. I do have a question for Paige about the plan. Is this a retaining wall?
Yes.
Okay, and this is another retaining wall over here?
Yes.
Okay, is there any retaining wall here?
No.
Okay, so this retaining wall, what's the purpose of this?
That is to avoid further wetland impact.
It's not to maintain that driveway or anything along there?
No, we could certainly grade that out, but it would result in more impact.
Okay. So what kind of drop-off are we talking about on the other side of this wall?
It varies. So it ranges from It looks like at its highest point is around 4 feet.
Okay. All right, so getting to my comments, I'm just gonna, unless the board would like me to review everything that I sent you, that I've already reviewed the last time we were here, I'll skip most of that. And I'll just read the top part of my letter for the record. Again, my name is Ryan O'Brien. I live at 20 Haven Lane in the J.D. Hill neighborhood. I'm opposed to allowing a conditional use permit in a wetlands conservation overlay district for 76 Portsmouth Ave because there is no hardship forcing Green and Company to place 34 units in the wetlands buffer in the first place. I understand the economic piece of that, I do, but it's a choice to develop here. It's a choice to put the buildings in the wetland buffer area, and it's not a requirement. There is an easy and obvious alternative to the design, and that is to have less units. That, you know, the CUP directly talks to this, and there's an easy and alternative solution, less units. That would not make buildings in the buffer. It's that simple. This is a calculated and systematic disregard for the wetland setbacks. It is a choice, not a requirement. That's pretty much everything I have to say on it. Unless the board has questions for me.
Oh, thank you.
Good evening. My name is Michael Hauk, and this is my wife, Danielle Frank. We are owners of 31 Haven Lane, which abuts the 76 Portsmouth Ave lot on two sides. You've heard from Danielle and me before, and after reviewing the latest proposal, we still feel it is necessary to voice our concerns about this project. Although there have been slight changes, the same concerns remain. Due to these concerns, Danielle and I and the other residential abutters are still unanimously opposed to this project in its current form. To reiterate what we've said in previous conservation meetings, many of us in the J.D. Hill neighborhood are concerned about this project's impact on our homes, home values, and the environment. We are aware that not all of our concerns fall under your purview, but wetlands do. Last month, members of this committee specifically called out the issue of building our wetlands and wetland buffers to the developers. However, the current plans still propose to do exactly that. The developer is choosing to build on wetland and wetland buffer areas to the detriment of the town of Exeter. Moreover, we see no evidence in the submitted proposal that they have taken our concerns about the scope of the project, the height of the buildings, or the proximity to our properties into consideration. We ask you to advise against a wetlands conditional use permit.
Good evening. As Michael said, we've been here before and will not go into all the details of the environmental reasons we are opposed to this proposal. The loss of air filtration, the loss of wild habitat, heat reduction, water management, and noise and light pollution. We do bring one piece of new information this time. 2 weeks ago, Michael and I were walking back to our house and saw one of the local bald eagles flying directly over our home and the lot at 76 Portsmouth Avenue. When I shared this news with some of our neighbors, we found out we are not the only people who've seen the bald eagle there, and that it has appeared periodically. And we want to be sure that the Conservation Commission, the state, and the developers are aware that the bald eagle is active there. Over the past 7 months, we and many J.D. Hill residents have written and spoken to the commission. With stories, pictures, and testimonies, we have consistently shown that the lot in question is ecologically important, period.
Our concerns have not been adequately addressed by the current changes. The new proposal still shows 6 of 11 buildings plus 2 parking areas having wetland impact. The developer has a right to build. We accept this, but the wetlands have existing protection to remain intact and functional. They are locally and federally protected from building for a number of reasons. It is detrimental to the ecology of the land, the wildlife within, and the community that surrounds the wetlands when they are destroyed. Again, we urge the Commission to uphold the protection that is in place for this land. Please advise against the wetland conditional use permit for 76 Portsmouth Avenue tonight. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I just have a question for Paige, and it was about the trail you mentioned. Is it going down from that green area into the wetlands, or is it on your property?
So it's on our property. It goes down from the green space and it just loops around and comes back up into the green space. So it's just a small trail for the residents.
Is it present, or is it going to be man-made?
No, it'll be man-made.
So it's going to go behind one of the residents' homes,
Correct.
and only your residents will be allowed to go there, but not the homeowners or any of the residents on the street?
It'll go behind one of the homes on our property, just to clarify.
Okay. And Green and Company, you mentioned you're going to take down all the trees. Why is that? I mean, I'm sorry, your company. You mentioned before that all the trees are going to be gone. That is a buffer for the noise. Yeah, you did. Yeah, you did. Yeah. You said those trees were going to be gone from there, and that's going to be what you planning on doing.
No.
You shouldn't be addressing me, but I didn't say that.
All right. I'm all set.
Can I get your name and address, please?
Stephen Taylor, 30 Haven Lane.
Thank you.
And Luis Franceschi, 36 Haven Lane, right in the border of the property. My concern is the same concern a lot of the neighbors has, is 36 units in what right now, in the neighbor, only 8 houses occupied. So the impact of 36 units, we are watching, talking about the wetlands, but is anybody calculating the amount of CO2 because you have 36 heating systems running, a lot of more cars running. So this is all adding to the acid rain that go to those wetlands. I'm not an expert, I'm just electric engineer, but the calculations are made to me. We're adding a lot of stuff that going to go directly to the wetland. We're adding surface area that gravity go to drainage over the wetland. And the normal amount of surface area, no matter how much drain you put, always leak oil and chemicals. No matter how much you do. I never haven't seen a development where you don't have that event. So not only that, now we're talking about trades. We put in trades for people to walk where people are already walking, but we are not altering the environment. And now we got to remove the vegetation, remove the animals, to put somebody to work in there. Doesn't make sense to me either. Is that my concern? Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Anything else from the board? Nope. Want to run through?
Yes.
Don.
Oh, Don.
Hi there. Good evening. Don Clement over here.
I was quiet because I wanted to listen to the testimony of the developer and of the board and of the butters, the public earlier. I'm going to keep my comments to just the CUP application for wetland buffers. That's all before us tonight. But having said that, from an even environmental and ecological perspective, in my opinion, there's an awful lot of concerns and issues beyond that. But again, we have to limit our discussion tonight on the CUP. That particular area we're talking about, where the development is, all moves toward a drainage area that drains down to Wheelwright Creek, eventually the Squamscott and Great Bay, which are two of our more important natural resources. When you have dense, intensive development, you're going to accelerate and intensify the amount of pollutants coming off of that development. It's just, there's no other way around it. It's just going to happen. Over time, those pollutants are going to have a negative impact and degrade the existing leftover buffers and wetlands to the point is that they're not going to function like they functioned today. It may take 5 years, it may take 10 years, it may take 20 years, but eventually it's going to occur that we are just, when you have a dense, intensive development, that's what's going to happen. Now, I don't have a vote, I'm not a voting member tonight, I believe, but if I were, I would have to say that I would vote no on this particular project. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Don. Does anybody have any further comment or wish to make a motion?
How about we go through the CIP?
You want to go through that again?
Need to go through the criteria.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, start with number one, that the proposed use is permitted in the underlying zoning district.
Yeah.
I think everybody agrees that it is. 2, no alternative design which does not impact a wetland or wetland buffer or which has less detrimental impact on the wetland or wetland buffer is feasible.
I have a question that I don't understand. I'm sure there's a simple answer. Maybe my brain is gone. Probably is. But in the middle of the response, it says, as discussed at the last Conservation Commission meeting, New Hampshire DES meeting, right, filling of these wetlands for the style of development would not be permitted by New Hampshire DES. Now, what does that mean?
That was something Jim Gove had discussed. There's some kind of contradictory statute out of the state, I believe, that you've been working to get changed.
Well, it was those there's two minor wetland ditches in the middle of the property. And I think we had talked about, could they build on top of those, fill those in? And the answer was no. So some of the design is related to avoiding those direct inputs, even though they're not significant wetlands, and impacting those direct wetlands may allow the development to minimize the buffer impacts. Do you know what I mean? So that was, they're saying they can't do that though, because of the state avoidance and minimization criteria.
Nailed it.
Okay.
Yeah, I think DES has a preference just to avoid especially with developments.
I mean, I think for number 2, I mean, we could, I don't know if there's more in here there was a significant buffer reduction, particularly on the larger wetland area buffer that we were talking about, wetland B. There is still some buffer there that is impacted. And also, I guess, wetland A, there's a little more space to that. So to me, the only way to reduce it further, which we've talked about here, would be to reduce the scope, which isn't really on the table, at least on our table. So I'm feeling, I don't have a strong opinion against number 2, or like I did last time.
Drew, why did you say not on the table, just based on what was presented presented as part of the plan, or?
Yeah, I don't know. We don't have the authority to negotiate sizes of developments,
Right,
as far as I'm aware.
But we can negotiate that they take stuff off out of the buffer.
Right, that's the piece I want to understand better, because the wording said, naively, the wording seems pretty precise.
Yeah, no, you're right.
And I guess we're not here to litigate the state statute, right? But so it says no alternative design is feasible. Well, there could be a lot buried in the word feasible, I suppose.
Right.
Economically feasible, sounds like that's the argument that's being presented, but anyway.
Can I speak to that a little bit? Or is it board only at this point?
No, go ahead.
Just to add to, I guess, what Michael was saying earlier. Like, there certainly are options that are feasible, but after hearing the feedback from the Conservation Commission and specifically from the Planning Board and the abutters, we felt that this proposal was a better fit for the neighborhood and this particular site versus the larger buildings, which have less impact, could fill wetlands potentially, but could be certainly way more condensed, but would be a denser project. So we're trying to weigh kind of 2 different things. And when we redesigned this based on the feedback at the last month's meeting, we did tighten it up as much as we possibly could. So with this particular style of development, this is the only option that's feasible. There's no other way that we could find to reduce it further. The only other alternative, aside from going with less units, which we've already discussed we can't do, would be to go back to the large building concept, which we don't feel is the best fit for this site after all of the feedback that we've been hearing.
So you could go up.
We could go up, but we can't go further in.
Like a Ray Farm, Sterling Hill.
Correct.
That sort of building.
Yes.
Or I think their other option, which is also not a great option, would be to cross wetland B and build in that upland. And so I know we haven't talked too much about the conserving that area, but I think that is part of this, that there is a significant portion of the property that's going to be kept in a natural state.
You see, in there, they state, no other alternative layout is feasible that would support this type of housing, which is the most suitable fit for the neighborhood. I don't understand how, excuse me, 34 townhouses fits into 8 normal or sort of average houses.
Well, it sounds like we're talking about, well, like I said to Paige, there's 2 choices here. Keep the buildings at kind of a residential scale, or go into a dormitory type style of building. And, that I assume you studied and is allowable, right? You can make that work.
What's the difference in height?
Yes, that would work. I mean, the best thing I could tell you to give you an idea, if you were on Haven Lane and you drove to the very end of Haven Lane and looked at the Chinburg buildings, that's the scale we're talking about. They're very tall, they're 50-foot. Then there's other regulations that deal with that might make other parts and pieces a little bit taller. It would have less of an impact.
Less of a,
And it would be
less
80
of a
units.
less of a buffer impact.
Less of a buffer impact. It would have, I think, based on our original meetings, I know you may think it's overly intense now, but the alternative was something more almost commercial scale, which is what we thought you didn't want. So we took that plan, set it aside, and tried to do something that works with you. Instead of having 34 units, it would pop up to 80. I mean, if you think 34 is too much, I'm sure you're going to think 80 is too much. But we're not sitting here saying we need 80. We're trying to make it work in a scale that's more residential. This is clearly purely residential in a residential that abuts a residential neighborhood at a residential scale. So I don't know if that answers your question, but we're trying to work with you. You can always say no, but the alternative.
Well, you say you need 34 units. What's wrong with 28 units? Is that not?
We would go
Money
to
there
the big buildings. We would have to go to the big buildings. I'm telling you, we did this for your neighborhood.
If we're going to have people speak, I'd like to have them come to the microphone, please.
And everyone is speaking to the board.
Correct.
And
Yes.
the chair.
Yep.
The other thing to add to this is that this property is commercially zoned. So the alternative to any of these is a commercial development as well, which is obviously not in keeping with the neighborhood at all. So providing this townhouse style of development is more transitional, going from the single-family houses to townhouses to a mixed-use building on Portsmouth Ave, but still keeping the Portsmouth Ave development separate from the residential scale as well. And then secondly, the density, if you were actually to take the full almost 7 acres of land area on this property and divide it by the number of units, the density actually is similar to the J.D. Hill neighborhood. So those lots are almost around 7,000 square feet each. If you were to take that and multiply it by the number of units on that back portion of the development, the density actually is similar. So just to add to that as well.
That last thing that you said, are you saying you're taking the whole property and doing the division, or just where you're already building and that it's similar to where the J.D. Hill property is?
Just the whole property, the whole property, yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah,
I just wanted to understand.
yeah.
All right. Anybody else on? No, sure.
Ryan O'Brien, 20 Haven Lane again. So I think we were universally agreed as a neighborhood that we did not want to cut through from Portsmouth Avenue to Haven Lane. Agree with the board's and other people's statements on that. For me, and I can't speak for my other neighbors because I haven't talked to them about this, but my original alternative proposal for them was to make one large building immediately adjacent Thirsty Moose and the other property and have that access from Portsmouth Ave and maintain a large buffer between there and the neighborhood. To me, personally, I think that's a better choice than to have 40-foot buildings. I don't know what the current design is. What are the current heights for these?
35.
Okay, because the last design had 40-foot. Okay, so 35-foot is still 10 feet higher than any of the houses in the neighborhood and 20 feet almost. So let's just say 31 Portsmouth.
I think
Haven
we're
Ave.
getting away from what we can address.
Okay. All right. So anyway, from my perspective, I'd rather see one large building pushed all the way to Portsmouth Avenue side of the area than have 35-foot buildings immediately adjacent the neighborhood. But I can't speak for all my neighbors on that.
Okay, thanks. Anything else from the board on number 2? Number 3, a wetland scientist has provided an impact evaluation that includes the functions and values of the wetlands, an assessment of the potential project-related impacts, and concluded to the extent feasible, the proposed impact is not detrimental to the value and function of the wetlands or the greater hydrologic system. Anybody?
I think this one is more straightforward with limited actual wetland impact. So I think I see where Gove's function values come from with saying that the principal functions are not compromised for both these wetlands.
Yep. All right. That the design, construction, and maintenance of the proposed use will, to the extent feasible, minimize detrimental impact on the wetland or wetland buffer.
I have a question on that. It's kind of maybe between number 3 and number 4, and I know we've been over it, but just trying to make sure that I understand the functions and values piece. It's my understanding of that, the way it's written, is that because the function was mainly for water storage, that I guess it's a little unclear to me. It seems like that it's going to be draining faster, or basically, right? Because we're eliminating some of this water storage. And so maybe kind of between number 3 and number 4, I don't see that directly addressed in here. Maybe I missed it. Is there going to be an impact on how fast it's draining rainwater under heavy rainfall type of conditions? And would that have an impact on the drainage out through the wetland and potentially the neighborhood? Because those two things are kind of opposite sides of the same coin. A wetland stores water. The faster we make it drain, the less wetland we have, and the faster we're moving water around. Just an understanding type question.
Yeah, so I guess there's 2 parts to answer that. I think are you referring to the culvert that crosses over behind Thirsty Moose? Or just in general?
I'm just looking at the answers to number 3 and number 4. I'm not trying to question the conclusions that the scientists drew.
Okay. Yeah, so I think to answer the first part about the culvert itself, we're really just repairing a culvert that's there. So it may not be draining well today, but when we replace it, it will drain as it should have the entire time, and may have at one point before it was clogged. And then secondly, as it relates to drainage overall for the development, we need to study the peak flows and volumes of stormwater runoff in both the existing and the proposed condition, and compare them and make sure that we're not increasing either of them in the proposed condition. So we have to make sure that the drainage is all addressed in that way, as well as provide treatment as is required per your regulations. And that's all reviewed by your town engineer.
So the drainage shouldn't be faster or slower. Is that what you're saying? It should
Correct.
stay the same.
Yeah, we try to match it as best we can.
Right, because this is a little hard to square with the desires of the neighborhood residents to get better drainage. Well, they're a little bit opposite, I think.
Yeah,
Yes.
yep, I see what you're saying, yep.
Yeah, that's a good point.
All right. Okay, number 5, that the proposed use will not create a hazard to individual or public health, safety, and welfare due to the loss of wetland, the contamination of groundwater, or other reasons. Any comments?
No? I mean, I think their answer's fair. Impacts are minor.
Get the chair's attention.
Sorry?
Can I still ask a question?
Sure.
Can you go to the mic?
Oh, thank you.
Oh, thank you. Tammy Ham, 8 Woodlawn Road. I live up the street. But in answer to that question, because it was raised the last time we were here, when it was brought to the attention that, like, the Foss land that they had across the street, how that was impacting that, just that little strip was impacting the water, our water situation. How can this not be impacting that?
Well, the Foss property, we were concerned primarily about the reservoir, which supplies a lot of the town drinking water.
Okay,
It wasn't so much a drainage issue, really.
it wasn't? All
No.
right. Okay, my apologies then.
When this is below that, so that property was just above the reservoir. Here, we're below those features. And this drains out to the Swampscott River, which is an important water body as well, but not a drinking water source.
Okay. Number 6. The applicant may propose an increase in wetland buffers elsewhere on the site that surrounds a wetland of equal or greater size and of equal or greater functional value than the impacted wetland. And I believe they've rebutted that they're attempting to achieve that by leaving that other upland piece untouched.
I think they were going to do that whole piece, is what she came to.
Well, yeah, I'm sorry, yeah, but
Yeah.
they're not going to try to get there, I guess.
Right.
Yeah, and in this response, the language is stronger. It says that the east side of the site is to be permanently conserved as green space and remain undeveloped as part of this project.
And it's, as they said, it's going to go into the deed.
Right.
Is that an increase in buffers elsewhere? That's the wording of the question.
There would be an increase there.
Essentially, yeah.
I guess so.
Say the buffer's as big as you want now in that space, so it's essentially an increase, yeah. Because they're not going to do anything to it. Yeah.
All right. Number 7, in cases where the proposed use is temporary or where construction activity disturbs areas adjacent to the immediate use, the applicant has included a restoration proposal revegetating any disturbed area within the buffer with the goal to restore the site as nearly as possible to its original grade and condition following construction. I believe that's been stated. Or, you want to?
One more question, sorry. Tammy Ham, 8 Woodlawn Circle. Can I just ask, I understand that there's got to be something here built, but that said, what is the obligation after the fact, right? So what would be the obligation, say they did have a water issue and there was impact and all of that, what would be the obligation to them to fix that? Like to take care of what they say they're going to. I guess I've run into situations like this in other places that I've lived, and people say they're going to do things, and then it does have an impact. You don't realize it till it actually happens. What is then the obligation?
Well, there should be town oversight during the construction process to have them follow the plans as they've been engineered. The engineering they're doing is being reviewed. So that's kind of the insurance that it's, we were talking about making the drainage better. Well, it's going to stay about the same. The big thing is not to make it worse.
That's a lot of buildings.
Right.
And that's a big, I mean, I don't even abut it directly. I'm going to have the impact of the traffic that's going to go by my house. But that said, I walk those streets all the time, and there is a lot of water. When it rains, there's a lot of water that runs into those drains, and I can't imagine that they are not going to be impacted even more so. Like, I just feel bad because I think once those are built, nobody really is going to understand how much that is going to be impacted back there.
That's where you got to put your faith in the engineers, I guess. Dan, that gentleman wanted to.
Craig Boudreau, 11 Bonnie Drive. To piggyback on her point is, I haven't had more than a trickle of water in my basement in the last 10 years. And I may be unique in this situation in the neighborhood, but I don't see water in my basement directly. Even with the best laid plans, what if, this is develop, it happens? What is there going to be their responsibility if I start getting water in my basement? The engineers may think they're doing things correctly, but there's a lot of variables here.
I honestly don't have the answer to that.
It's not really in our, that's more.
Yeah, that's outside of our.
Yeah.
It's more in the planning committee.
So, appreciate your concerns, but we can't. Oh, Dan, one more.
Danielle Frank, 31 Haven Lane. I'm just curious, we're not seeing a landscaping plan tonight, and I'm wondering if the Conservation Commission will have it, if we get to that point, which I'm assuming we will the Conservation Commission ever get to weigh in on reestablishing, which I think goes to the question you just read, reestablishing the flora after the fact?
That's going to have to be specified on the engineering plans that are going to go before the planning board, and the planning board will oversee all the plantings and all that sort of thing.
Typically, the Conservation Commission weighs in terms of buffer plantings. I'm not sure who asked that. Oh, okay, yeah. So typically, the Conservation Commission would weigh in on buffer plantings or restoration or things of that nature. But because this landscaping, it would be screening landscaping, that's more of a planning board issue. I know it seems like vegetation, but kind of that's how it sorts out, I guess.
And there is a landscape architect on the planning board, so there'll be a level of understanding there, I believe. Anything else on that item? All right. That all required permits shall be obtained from the New Hampshire Department of Environmental Services, Water Supply and Pollution Control Division under New Hampshire RSA 485-A:17, the New Hampshire Wetlands Board under New Hampshire RSA 483-A, and the United States Army Corps of Engineers under Section 404 of the Clean Water Act. And I'm assuming you'll be doing that.
Yes.
Okay.
Can I make one more statement here?
Certainly.
Probably making. I go along with Don a little bit on this, and I guess that shows our generation. But a buffer is, according to our same 9.1, the protected upland areas adjacent to all systems described within the Wetlands Conservation Overlay District. This area acts as an essential maintenance and protection of wetland values and functions. My past, I've always thought of an impact on a buffer being somebody's building a house and the last little corner of their house is in a buffer, maybe 50, 60 square feet of land. I can see saying that, we've passed that. But we're talking about quite a bit of land here that's buffers. In fact, there's a lot. And I just don't see that we treat them, I hope we're not treating them just so too cavalierly, that's all. But I don't vote, so it's up to you, buddy.
All right. Does anybody have a motion?
Dave, you mind if I brain dump a little bit? Is that all right?
I've kind of been waiting for that.
I think that was a
That was
professional way to say it.
Yeah, right. Yeah, the professional way to say it, yeah. So first of all, I just want to say, I really appreciate the amount of civic engagement that has been coming out here, for each meeting and providing comments, staying up to date on it. I don't think that we could live in a community as awesome as Exeter without the kind of engagement that we see here regularly. So first of all, thank you to everyone that's coming out here and providing comments. We absolutely hear that and love the fact that you are engaged in this fashion. Secondly, I'd like to acknowledge the fact that I do feel the developers have been very responsive to the feedback that they've been hearing at these meetings too. For instance, the last one, we talked very directly and specifically about Wetland B, how we found value there. And I feel that, I don't feel like my time has been wasted with the developers, with Paige coming up here and showing us new plans. I feel like I see those changes as they are being made. So again, to Michael's point too, I thank you for hearing what we are saying and coming to us with changes that I feel are actually significant enough to actually, determine this. I, unfortunately, am sitting here on the Conservation Commission, and I'm not just the decider of all things Exeter. Maybe that's for the best. I also am not the decider of all things environmental, probably also for the best. And lastly, I realize that the unfortunate part of sitting up here in the Conservation Commission is that ultimately I have to choose my battles when it comes to what I am allowed to talk to about. And in this case, it's generally, very specifically, wetlands and the buffers that surround those wetlands because of those values, right? So I am sitting here saying, okay, I am not thinking about density. I mean, again, just half of my brain loves the comprehensive view of it. So I see, I'm hearing the words being talked about of the feeling of the neighborhood, the cut-throughs, the this, that, and the other thing. But at the end of the day, if we are ever going to get out of this meeting on sometime tonight, I have to scope myself down to what I am allowed to talk to. And right now, what that is a CUP specifically dealing with wetlands. As mentioned, the wetland that was really bothering me, that they, had significant impacts in, was B. I feel like that was the one that I saw the most value in. But again, pulling back and looking at this complex from a bird's eye view, there's not a lot of value in a lot of this. There's wildlife value, that's absolutely true, but specifically talking about that body of water and that body of water, there are reasons that we as a commission go out and proactively say we are going to conserve land, because that is the mechanism that we have at our disposal to really zero in on areas that say we absolutely need to protect something here. And in this case here, if we were going to sit down and say, what are we going to protect? Wetland C is just not it, in my point of view. It's a man-made wetland that is being held back, and ultimately artificially being held back because of a culvert that's not functioning properly. And because of that, the dominoes start falling for me. Most of the impacts here to those buffers are buffers around a wetland whose values are already, questionable. And because of that, the protective value of those buffers, protecting those values of the wetland, come into question for me as well. So all of these values start ticking down for me. Again, I'm happy to see that almost all of those impacts have been pulled out of Wetland B's area. There's also very, very minimal actual wetland filling and disturbance here, which is a plus. And when it comes down to it, again, I'm sort of coming to the end of my dump, so I appreciate everyone's time and just sort of listening to my stream of consciousness here. But when it really comes down to it, it's not my decision as to whether a development goes forward or not, but which fights I am willing to take for the sake of environmental values of wetlands within our community. And I am not ready to pick that one for specifically the buffers in the wetlands I see in the bottom left-hand corner of the plan. Thanks, Dave.
Well said, Trevor.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yes, that was very good. And just to echo something Trevor said, Paige, I think you've done an outstanding job.
Thank you.
You have all the data readily at hand.
Too many numbers in that letter. I will say that. Hopefully it wasn't too many for you.
Thank you, though.
You're welcome.
All right. Okay.
Just to
Valerie?
clarify something, that wetland down in the left-hand corner is A, isn't that right?
Yes.
Yes.
And not
Oh, it's
C.
A?
Yeah,
Oh, my
I
gosh.
think you were referring to A, but
Okay.
that's okay.
All that from the record. I meant the big one.
All right.
So,
All right, I'll motion unless other people have
go for it.
want to.
Just thinking. Go for it.
Okay. I'll motion that we've reviewed the wetland conditional use permit, and we have no objection to the application as proposed, with the condition that the eastern portion of the property that's not proposed to be disturbed is permanently conserved through a deed restriction or other equivalent means.
And when you say eastern, again, I'm sorry, you mean, we're talking about that whole thing?
The whole thing.
Yeah,
The area is shown essentially to remain wooded
not just the
as,
upland. Okay.
yeah.
And we'll add that the culvert, yeah, we can add that the culvert issue is addressed.
To the planning board satisfaction. Yeah.
I don't care too much about the culvert, but that's fine. I think we can add that in.
Can I just ask a question, Kristen, do we need to add any text in there about before occupancy starts, or?
Yeah, so just so that there's a time frame associated with the deed restriction, I would recommend that you include, prior to the issuance of a certificate of occupancy, a deed indicating the area is permanently conserved is recorded.
Okay, I'll modify
If that
my
works,
motion
yeah.
to,
Should the condition also for the wooded space, should that be specific to allow for a trail? Is that okay to word it that way, or does it need to?
Trails in the upland, not the.
right,
Correct, yeah.
yeah, we
You want me to offer a suggestion?
Yes.
we typically review conditions like that at a later date. I'm not talking about my
So
motion, right? Go ahead.
But this isn't a conservation.
This is an easement, yeah.
Right, so it's a little bit of a different animal.
Okay.
So you almost have to preload it a little.
Okay, so so I'm going to modify the motion to,
Do you have something in
I do have something I can offer if you want, per text.
to what Kristen Murphy says right now.
Prior to the issuance of a certificate of occupancy, a deed restriction indicating the east side as presented in the January 30th plans is permanently protected in perpetuity, with the exception of a passive recreation pedestrian trail, as discussed in the meeting.
Well said, Drew.
And is it also going to go into the condo association rules? Does that need to be in there, or not? No?
It's up to you, sure.
I think the deed restriction is a higher level.
Is a higher,
Thank you. All right, thank you. Okay.
and we can let the planning board sort that out.
What was the third condition item? I think I missed it. The first one was the,
Okay, just to summarize, we said we would approve it. I think there were only two. Just the deed restriction before certificate of occupancy with an allowance for trail.
okay,
And then the culvert upgrade or
Okay.
replacement.
perfect, thank you.
Back in my day, we used to do a condition for the porous pavement, but I don't think we do that anymore since it's so normalized and regular now. We used to do like that maintenance back in my day. You don't remember that?
Let's
Help me.
Yeah, there used to be a condition that just the maintenance schedule would be supplied on the plans in some avenue.
Can I?
Yeah, so that typically is part of our standard plan notes anyway. And then we also have to provide, the planning board requires an operation and maintenance manual, which would outline that in a lot of detail.
Amazing. Thank you.
Okay.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, sir.
could we just review that motion so that we make sure we have it just the way we want it?
Okay, Drew.
Sorry, Drew. I'm a stickler on these motions.
I started the motion originally. Yeah, this is fair, Dan, thank you.
Do you want Kristen's language so you can
Do
get
you-
it all?
Do you have it written down?
I'll bring it to him. I'm just.
Hardly legible.
How many people
I
can
like
touch the
all
paper?
in one.
Okay.
The bottom one, if you can read it, I don't know.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk.
You can't read it.
Ready to go.
I can read it, sort of. So my motion is that we've reviewed the conditional use permit application and are not, I believe I said, not opposed to the application as proposed with the following conditions: that the culvert is upgraded as discussed, and that prior to the issuance of a certificate of occupancy, a deed restriction is
Recorded, executed.
executed, permanently protecting the east side of the development as presented on the January 30th plan for future development, with the exception of a passive recreation pedestrian trail.
Very good. We would just second.
I'll second that motion.
Do we have any discussion? All right. All those in favor? Say aye.
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 Opposed?
No.
Okay, so we have 6 in favor and 1 opposed. Motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Feel better?
Sorry we dragged you out here.
Yeah.
No, this is hard.
No,
It's hard.
You had all that pent up.
Would have been easier for me to keep my mouth shut and go home.
Yeah, that was good.
Was.
I thought that was very good.
Trevor,
I was,
the brain dump.
unfortunately,
Oh, it's perfect. Yeah.
he did do a good job of
All right.
still, I just don't like this.
Moving on. We've got some committee reports. Property Management, Rains Farm Stewardship Committee meeting report. Anybody from the Rains Committee, like Nick?
I am here, and I'm happy to report on it.
Good night.
I'm not sure if the minutes made it into the packet.
Thought so.
The normal minutes did, but
Oh, what, I'm sorry.
not the stewardship committee.
See the reins.
I do have some that I can share. Just give me a second to dig them up. So
I didn't print the full packet for myself. I could pull them up, though, if you,
I can skim through them,
okay.
if that works.
Yeah.
The Rains Farm Committee met Wednesday, 2 weeks ago. Gosh, it seems like yesterday, on the 29th of January. Does that sound right, Keith? We recapped the solstice event. We had 42 attendees at that, which was a great little turnout. We talked about the work that was being done on the barn. It sounds like Stephen is done on his work until about April. Work still remains mostly on the east side of the exterior, as well as a staircase inside and some other odds and ends. But considerable progress has been made. We talked a little bit about the cement floor, which, I don't know, Keith, you can chime in at the end of this. We talked about removing that so we could get the staircase in, so we could then get the fire suppression system in. We talked a little bit about the mowing at Rains Farm. No dramatic changes to the mowing plan, just some talk about how the rock wall has deteriorated over the years. There's a crushed drain pipe, just minor hazards that we're working on. We talked about past events. We kicked around some ideas for future events. I'm going to be putting together a Google form to kind of collect ideas from the Rains Farm Stewardship Committee, also from this committee, to help us kind of get organized going forward versus just kind of throwing all those emails into Kristen's inbox and driving her crazy. That way they'll all be collated within a Google Drive. And that was it. I mean, we talked about future events and how we're trying to keep the momentum going. We've got a lot of good things going on that property. Obviously, tomorrow night we've got the snow shoe hike, or is it just a hike? I don't know what we're calling it anymore. But yeah, we've got a lot of good things going, so we're trying to keep the momentum going, and I'll let Keith chime in because he can fill in what I missed.
Okay, so tomorrow we're going to have the Moonlight Walk. We have a spot for a warming fire. We're going to a porta potty delivered tomorrow. Did want to talk about perhaps getting one there year round. There are a lot of people there over the weekend, a lot of kids, sledding, etc. I was just wondering how we would get an avenue to fund that. And additionally, the cement floor has been removed along with the wood. So we now need to figure out a way to fund the staircase that would take you from the second floor to the basement without having to go out and around the barn. There was some talk with Kristen about possibly moving the fire detection system to the north corner, so that wouldn't be in the same room as the staircase. So that's still in process. We're going to have to wait for the fire detection company to go to make an assessment on that. But still, we need to come up with the $4,500. Dave and I went down and looked at that, and we thought that was above our pay grade to try to do as far as the structure of the barn. Could be, some of those floor joists are pretty deteriorated, but they've been eaten. So they, with the moisture from the cement over the years, so that's going to be problematic. We need to get somebody in there that really, knows what
Well,
they're doing.
speaking of funding, I was looking yesterday at the original budget that was put together for the Rains Barn, and there was $4,000 in there for a stairway.
Right.
So we don't have that money any longer?
No,
or-
so the history of events is the project was approved. By the time we got a contractor in place, it was a substantial
cost,
amount of
yeah.
time. COVID hit, building materials, costs went up. We had to modify the scope to match what, we got a revised
Right.
estimate from Steve Bedard. That revision did not include the stairs. We were
Oh, so-
able,
So that was the initial
yes,
quotation?
right.
And then there was another quotation that never made it onto the site?
Not onto the revised scope of work.
Yeah, okay.
So when we reworked it to address the inflation, we couldn't afford to do the
Okay.
stairs. So we deprioritized that.
Right. Okay.
As the same with the north and the west side painting, right? But then we were able to secure grant funds to cover that.
I was excited. I thought I was going to be able to call up Keith and go, Keith, I found the money.
So the question remains, how do we do that? How do we fund the porta potty for year round if we're going to continue to have events? And how do we get the $4,500 for the staircase? Now, the staircase, even if we don't put the staircase in, those floor joists in that section where the cement moisture was for all those years needs to be addressed sooner probably than later, in my opinion. Don't you think so?
Oh, they're shot. Yeah.
Thank you.
That and the foundation is kind of dicey.
Yeah. So if those can, if we can figure out a way to address those, that would be good. But I'm excited about being able to use it. It's great to see more and more people out there since we have snow. There's tons of kids sledding. And the barn is ready to be, have people in it tomorrow night. So that's good. And so if anybody watching at home, kids, please come. Bring your parents, bring your grandparents. We had a lot of grandparents last time. That was cool. So
Did you get the occupancy calculation?
did meet with the assistant fire chief, and he did get all the information for a calculation and gave us a seasonal fire permit for 2025 to use. So we're good there. We should have that shortly as far as that goes. DPW was kind enough to go out yesterday and plow out a large area to park as well as an area to scoot down closer to the barn anyway to be access that, and it should be pretty navigable tomorrow night. And I thought I would, open it up to see if anybody had any suggestions about what else we could do out there. It's an awesome place, it's an awesome building. I think, again, as we've discussed before, the answer there is use. If we use it, it's going to stay in good shape. If we have an event there twice a year, it's going to continue to deteriorate. We need to use it. We need to get people interested. We need to get volunteers interested in maintenance. We need to get possibly donations to help out with some of the maintenance, even if it's just, somebody saying they'll mow the lawn once in a while. Expand the area of mowing a little bit around the barn so that we have more area that we can use. And it's more, we need to get some signage up. We discussed that at the meeting. I feel that that's very important, that be delineated as Town of Exeter property. I don't think many people in town here realize that they own that. So we need to make that something that everyone understands. And I think that will help, with the maintenance and keeping up its appearance and keep it from degrading. Yes, sir?
So the barn and the house and everything is part of the property that we own? Because this is something that I've been confused about as well.
Okay, there's 50 acres there, and we just own the barn, not the house.
Okay.
So it's just the actual barn, and it's a unique thing for the Conservation Commission because we have purview over that.
Okay.
And it's our only building.
So we're meeting at the barn?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, there'll
Because
be
there's a lot just down the street too.
Right, so they've plowed from that lot to the barn, up to a rise, and they plowed that area so that you wouldn't go down the hill and get stuck on the ice or whatever. So there's a big kind of plateau up there. You can park. Plenty of parking for everybody. I'd say there's room for 60 or more cars in totality there. So it should be good.
I was in the forest this morning. It's definitely snowshoe conditions.
Yeah, it's getting there, that's for sure.
For the first time in 7 years since I've lived here.
Was, I remember, I can't remember exactly what it is, but Ben had a suggestion. Was that discussed at your meeting? And is that on hold for?
We talked about it at the meeting, but Kristen brought up some relevant clarifications between Ben and I. I'm going to have to dig those up unless you have them on the top of your head.
Yeah, so Ben had suggested, and it's a little bit complicated, but Ben had suggested that, that he could set up a ticket site and offer an opportunity for individuals to donate through the ticketing site. So the complexity with that, from my perspective, is the Conservation Commission can accept donations to put them into a conservation fund. Anyone who donates to the Conservation Commission is entitled to a tax statement. I don't have the right terminology for that, but, and so if it was something that Ben was doing, if it's a it just seemed a little bit complicated because it was a Conservation Commission event, but Ben was collecting donations. Ben had suggested he could turn around and give those donations from him to the town, but he couldn't offer the tax statements or
Right.
something along those
Well,
lines.
the
And
people
so
that donated wouldn't be able to get the write-off either.
Right, right. And so it's just complicated. The other thing I was going through, I won't make it that complicated, never mind.
I think I can do it with some brevity, but Kristen was unable to attend the meeting, so we had discussed ways to accept donations, and we weren't sure if we could designate fees to the Conservation Commission or if those fees would have to go into the general fund and we would never see them again. So that's where Ben's email came into play, and I think, Kristen, hit the nail on the head. We can take those donations and earmark them in some fashion for future
Right.
conservation use.
And so that's the complexity in my mind is, so if I as an individual donate for Rains Barn repairs, right? How the town is obligated to account for that funding. And so how do I then know that that donation was spent on repairs? If we have $1.25 back left, where does that go? Do you know what I mean? Like
Right.
it gets complicated. And so we had talked from the get-go that an ideal situation here would be to establish a Friends of Rains, 501c3, Friends of Rains farm. That's a much cleaner approach, in my opinion. I'm not a lawyer, but it just takes all of the complexities away from it in terms of tracking and accounting and reporting. And then it gives you a little bit more flexibility and there's complications with that, but it takes it off of the town's lap, I guess.
Yeah.
So currently, do we have any money?
Yeah, so I apologize, I did not bring so every year, the Conservation Commission has a budget. We went through the budget process and level funded Conservation Commission with a couple tweaks, but basically level funded the Conservation Commission. So assuming, the budget passes in March, you'll end up with the same budget as you have now. If the budget failed, it would default to last year's budget. So
And what is that amount?
I don't have the dollar amount, but it's not $4,500. So the other avenue for funding is the Conservation Fund, and there's a small amount of money in there. I feel like it's, $4,000 to $6,000, and I don't have the exact numbers for that, but I can bring that to the next meeting.
And don't we have some money associated with that other monitoring effort?
So there's stewardship funds.
Stewardship funds.
But that's supposed to be for funding, so if there's either if there's litigation in terms of boundary disputes or
Yeah.
things of that nature, that's really what the stewardship fund is for. And it's a different pot of money.
Okay, so how about the porta potty? Do we have enough money for that if we had for a year and have it maintained?
So how much is a porta potty for a year? maintained?
It's about $2,000.
I think it's close. It would be your budget for the year.
Okay.
But it's this board's money to choose how to spend it. If you're all feel that this is how you want to spend it, that's fine. But in order for us to have sort of a line item like the stairs, it really needs to come in the budget process. And we didn't. When we talked about the Conservation Commission's budget, I had said, my feeling is the stairs aren't our priority this year. It was the fire detection system. We got that funded through another avenue, and so we went through the budget request level funded.
Good. Are we, in
Yeah.
terms of the budget process, we're going to vote in March for the proposed budget, and it's pretty much level funded, correct? But the thing for the commission to do would be to organize within their work plan a conversation about what things you'd like to ask for going into the next budget process. And that really should be done kind of May, June, July, kind of, that's the time.
Yep.
So put that in your work plan, and
So, I'm sorry to interrupt, but we're going to wait a year?
that is our form of government. I'm not the wildest fan of our form of government, but our voters are wild fans of our form of government.
No, I'm not disputing the form of government. I guess I'm disputing
that
the
is-
year.
Yeah.
That's all.
Yeah, that is
So-
how it works.
Okay.
We're already past the point where we can request funds through the budget process.
So even for, I guess, get the horse out in front of the cart, to me, like having a porta potty to make the property usable is a good priority, right? And then people get interested, and then maybe we can get the donations and circumvent the year wait, right? But we need to fund, we need to get like step 1, step 2, step 3, and keep moving.
And as Kristen just said, that's a decision for this commission to allocate the funds from their budget if they so choose.
I mean, why don't we fund it for at least part of the year? I mean, maybe we can't do the whole year.
Yeah, I think I want to have a discussion with the company and see if we can get a deal of some kind, because they seem pretty amenable to that, so, okay. I want to see what we can get up for a price, and then that's a good idea.
Yeah, why not? I mean, at high traffic times or whatever, I mean, I think that's a good thing to spend our money on.
Yeah, I think it would get people out there, say, oh, I gotta leave, I have to go to the bathroom, you know what I mean, that
Right.
type of deal.
Yeah.
So,
But I would urge you to put that in your work plan, May, June,
for next year.
Yeah.
to get organized for 2026 town meeting.
Okay.
And Keith, I know you can't wait that long, so we can talk offline about a 501c3 and seeing if we
Yeah,
can
no,
stand something like that up.
I don't mean to seem impatient, but, it's my experience that once the ball gets rolling, you keep the
Yep.
ball rolling. And, it's rolling, so.
Yep.
So maybe for your next meeting, put this as a line, an agenda item. We'll have the numbers in front of us, and then the board can make an informed decision about what your thoughts are for the coming year, at least in terms of the porta potty. I don't think you could do the stairs
Right.
in the current line item, but I could also bring the conservation fund dollars, and you could see what's possible there.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Could I ask a question?
Yeah?
So, is there a bunch of different funds for different things currently with the board? Or are we just talking about the budget and that's the only fund? It sounded, there was a discussion about just a fund for Rains Farm. Are there funds for other conservation projects around so that money is earmarked that way?
So the Conservation Commission gets about $9,100 a year. A portion of that goes to dues to New Hampshire Association of Conservation Commissions. There's some money set aside to cover interns for conservation property monitoring. There's kind of a larger pool of funds for conservation land administration, which covers this sort of thing. And then there's roadside mowing. Everything else is kind of $50 here, $20 there for, postage and things of that nature. And then there's a line item for education and training. But the total, all of those together, is $9,100.
Okay, so there isn't is it 501c3 now?
There's not one currently.
Okay, so I would encourage the board to definitely pursue that, because I know from my own experience with recreation, that was the only way that recreation programs could work in the town that I used to live in, was because they were funded through that nonprofit. And you could funnel your money for a lot of different things through that and then not have to deal with this other piece. Just a suggestion.
Thank you.
All right. You all set, Nick?
Yep, thank you.
Can I just mention one thing? So there is a member from the public here who attempted to come for public comment. I know it's to your discretion if you want to let her speak or not, but I'm just raising the issue that she's asked to speak.
Sure.
She's still back
Why
there.
not? Go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. My name is Karishma. I live at 6 Windermere in Exeter. So another good thing about our form of government is that citizens are allowed to petition for warrant articles to be submitted to the town election. And so we have March election coming up. And I, along with several other petitioners, actually about 37, were able to introduce 5 articles to the March election. They're Articles 33 to 37, and one of them is about the environmental protection, and I wanted to just bring it up today, if you would allow me. Okay. So the warrant article reads, and oh, by the way, I brought these brochures, but I didn't know you guys were such a large commission. They brought a few. So I'll just,
We can share.
I'll pass it. And I'll wait.
I'll share with Drew.
I don't know if you want to.
Thank you. So thank you. If you turn to Article 37, that is about environmental protection. So the ballot question says, shall the town vote to call upon our governor and state and federal elected representatives to conserve and maintain New Hampshire's public natural resources for the benefit of this and future generations? So at the town ballot on the election day, people can vote yes or no. And if they vote yes, that gives us a little bit more leverage to talk to our elected officials. Why did we bring this about? Because for several reasons. One, citizens cannot petition at the state level in New Hampshire. We can only do it at the town level. Unlike, say, Maine or California, we're not able to do it. So this is one reason. The second is our environment is in dire condition. It's a catastrophic crisis is happening. And as you saw in Los Angeles, it's burning. Flooding happened in Hampton. 13 feet of water was there just in January 2024. And there have been so many other incidences across the planet. So we have to take this very seriously. And the third reason we needed to bring this up is because the Constitution of New Hampshire does not guarantee its citizens a healthy environment, unlike some other states' constitutions. So even if our state did not take care of its environment, we have no leverage as citizens to hold our elected officials responsible. Anyway, so this is It is only one town. No other town is doing it at the moment, as far as I am aware. But it's a way to educate our people, our elected officials, and hopefully start the ball running and make movement across other towns and cities. So this is the plan. And as I mentioned, I've just put in a few bullet points in support of Article 37. I'll just read it out for the record. As citizens, we recognize the fundamental right of people, plants, and animals to have clean air, pure water, and a healthy environment. And if this particular sentence was just in our Constitution, it would negate all of the discussion. The second bullet point, we urge our state and federal governments to ensure that our state continues to have a clean, healthy, and sustainable environment upon which we all rely. As you are all aware, climate change is a significant cause of a global decline, actually maybe you're not all aware, of a global decline in male fertility, which arises from direct damage to testicular cells, sperm production, and poor sperm quality. We haven't seen this yet in human males, but we are starting to see this in farm animals, and so because of similar mammalian biology. And drought, heat waves, and heavy rainfall are leading to over $3.4 million loss for New Hampshire farmers per year, and the financial loss is expected to rise yearly. This is a very low estimate of what's going on in New Hampshire, $3.4 million loss, but unfortunately our governor and our legislator are not allowing us to study the impact of climate change to housing costs or our farming costs. And that's because a lot of our legislators actually believe that climate change is a hoax. And they actually go on record and publicly state that. Or they say that any kind of change in the environment is actually due to seasonal changes. Okay. And they don't call scientists to testify. And as you are all aware, in the seacoast, we are also very sensitive to the sea level rise. And in January 2024, there were back-to-back storms, which caused severe flooding in Northampton, up to 13 feet of water. And now, because it is not something that is being recognized as a climate factor, residents are having to pay out of pocket to raise their houses on stilts to avoid the next flooding. Anyways, I will pause and I will take questions if you have any, but my ask is that please to use your platform to encourage voters to teach voters about what's going on in the environment, to help us protect the environment, and also to vote yes on Article 37.
Thank you.
No question? Okay. Thank you.
Kristen has a student, I believe, that wants to establish a pollinator garden.
Yeah, so several town departments received an email from a student at the Great Bay Charter School, Allie Whitesell, who established a pollinator garden at the Great Bay Discovery Center a few years ago in partnership with staff there. She's interested as part of a senior project in putting a pollinator garden somewhere on town property. I know the Morissette property below the kiosk is an area where we have a lot of overgrowth. There's some vegetation there that, we have to go out and use weed whack on or, knock back. And so I thought she had a couple goals. One, that the location was accessible for public education because she wants to have an interpretive sign there, native plants, and then somewhere where the public can access it. There was another one, sorry, I said that twice. Anyway, she and I talked about the Morissette property just below the kiosk. I thought that would be a good idea. I met with her to sort of hear from her a little bit more of what her plans are. And so I told her I would mention this as a possibility to you all. And if it's something you're supportive of, she would go to work and draw up some plans and come to this board for potential approval of a project. She's not sure about funding, so it's another funding question. I have no idea cost. I'm hoping that's something that she would put together in this proposal, but I guess just as a step one, is this a location and a project that you feel is suitable for that property?
Of course.
I love it.
Right?
Yeah.
Everybody?
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a good spot.
So I'll have her come to the March Conservation Commission meeting and present the proposal.
Great.
All right. We've already kind of touched on the full moon hike. Do you have anything further to add?
I have one thing to add. Exeter TV reached out. They had saw the advertisement for the full moon hike, and so Dan, who's out back, is going to show up and do some filming during the event to get us some nice PR for the event. So, wear your tie.
Yes.
I'm looking at the invite that Kristen has, and there's 9 people that have said that they're coming, but there's 150 people that are interested. So somewhere in between is probably what we're looking at, which is a big upgrade last year when we had 0 people show up. But so it sounds like it's going to be a pretty well-attended event.
I think from past experience, when we had done the rains, I'd say maybe 5-7 years ago, down in Brizzleton, and we had, I don't know, 50, 60 cars out there. And they had to keep pushing the snow back to get them parked. It was good. We had a good hike.
Good.
All right.
Well, do we want to coordinate any other logistics? I'm going to be there. I'm doing the hike.
Sure. I'll light the fire. I'll
So-
probably light it at 5:30, get it going.
Okay.
And we'll have the table set up down below with hot water and cocoa and tea. I'll get some snacks.
And do you have that? You have that figured out, the cocoa and?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's all good. Yeah, we're good with that. We should have enough for
Somewhere
with
with
the tea and the cocoa, we'll have enough for 150 people.
Wow.
So, I mean,
That'd be
I don't
good.
know if everybody's going to get a cookie or not, but we'll see if we can.
No.
So, we'll try to do that, and
And so like at 6:35 or 6:40, whatever, I assume there'll be a group that heads out and we can walk through the woods trail. I think you described I could take people wherever I want, but
Right.
they can go down the trail. I went there today and it's pretty packed out. Go down the trail, through the woods, out across the field. And then either we have to come back, I think that's more packed out, or just head directly to the fire
yeah, the
area.
fire's going to be right outside the east end of the barn.
Yeah.
Sort of towards Exeter a little bit,
But-
you saw where that was. So
Yeah.
So.
But other people might just want to, I don't know, if people don't have snowshoes or whatever, they may just want to go hang out at the fire.
Yeah.
So that's another, not everyone has to
So I dug a
come
path
on the walk.
out so they could do that if you
Yeah.
don't have snowshoes or you don't have boots.
Yeah, or you don't want to, whatever.
So you can go from
So it'll be,
the parking area down to the fire area and into the both top level and bottom level of the barn.
so it'll be a bit of choose your own adventure,
Yeah.
we'll have people can come on the hike or they can just
Right.
go do whatever they want
Yeah.
at the barn area.
Yeah.
That was my vision.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay.
Perfect.
And is anyone else, there may be beneficial to have someone park on the parking, because there's the front normal parking area, but then there's this other parking area that Keith was describing.
Yeah,
So it
I'll
may,
park up there to kind of set an example, and we'll put the open flag out on that post that's near there,
right,
so people can see that from the road, and perhaps, there's some cones in the barn, I'll probably put the cones at the top of the crest so they don't go down the slope, and we
Yeah,
end
don't-
up having to
right.
push them up the hill. So,
But-
yeah, I think we'll be okay. I'll be out there early to try to, see anything that might come out. But it should be all opened up and people should be able to go pretty much everywhere in there, except for the cement floors out, but I did put a hasp on the door and get that, so no little kid can get away and get in there, so that's all,
Good.
should be secured.
I've got a elementary school event with my children, but I will be there closer to 6:30, so
Yeah.
whatever you guys need help with.
Okay.
Do you need that carafe that I
Yeah.
have? Okay, I'll grab that for you.
I'll take that. This looks like if, like you were saying, we're gonna get quite a few people, will bring some tea kettles and get that going for the hot water. We have the water, we have the stuff already. Also, I've got like 60 coffee mugs. Maybe I should get some paper ones?
It's probably enough. I mean, not everyone's going to have hot chocolate, from my experience.
Okay.
Okay. Is anyone, are you going to come, Kyle?
I think so, yeah.
Okay. Cool.
Kyle, do you have an update on Hike Exeter?
We do. Kristen, do you have anything in particular that you want to?
No.
So we've been releasing one hike a week. We're up to our 5th out of the 6 hikes. And I think it's been pretty amazing. The nice thing about a snowstorm is you kind of get an idea of how traffic there's been. And the hike that we released this week was the one at Gilman Park along the river. And you do not need snowshoes on that because it was so packed down that it was like walking on a sidewalk. And this was Sunday, 6 hours after the snow stopped. And I probably saw 10 people out there hiking. And so it's been great, and there's been a lot of people joining. We have the Hike Exeter Facebook page, and that's kind of a, I guess, ancillary bonus to this, is that it kind of gives us a way to reach out to the people when there's a Rains Farm event. These are the kind of our customers, sort of, and so when we put an event on there, we get a whole bunch of people that have eyes on it, and so that's, I think, been one of our problems in the past, is reaching the people that we want to notify of stuff. And I think that we're gonna I'm thinking maybe we do the last release on Sunday, since Monday's a holiday. So anybody that might want to hike on the holiday would be able to. But I think we're gonna have some people that are gonna finish the challenge next Monday, because people have been doing them as it goes along, which is kind of cool. And we have Travel in Nature has kind of jumped on board, and they've already led a hike. Last Saturday, they took people around Phillips Exeter Woods, and they're also giving a $10 off a $50 purchase or $20 off a $100 purchase to anybody that completes the challenge. So that's kind of cool. They have new ownership there, so they're looking to do more than just this. I think they spoke about, there's some book that they're trying to push, a children's book about what happens in the woods at night, and they're going to have the author come up, and we were thinking maybe we could do a night hike or something like that as part of that. But did I miss anything? Or?
No, it's just been really exciting to watch. If you're a Facebook user and you haven't joined that group, just the postings and sharing of everyone's individual hikes has been really cool. It's kind of like an exposure to people who use the trails that I just haven't seen here before. So it's a great project, and
Yeah,
I'm
it's
so
funny.
excited that you did that.
There's the picture of the Henry the Hippo, which is at the end of the Gilman Park.
Oh, yeah.
If you've seen that sign. And so I took a picture with my dog there, and I think 4 or 5 other people have as well, which is kind of funny. But yeah, so I mean, we've tried a lot to get people out in the woods, and it turns out what it had to be was a sticker. People excited about it, and I think that we'll have other challenges too, once people finish this one. But
So I just checked, that group has 143 people. So, and we just created it, you created it, well,
Yeah, like
announced
four
it
weeks ago,
4
I
weeks
think,
ago.
yeah.
It's crazy.
That's so cool.
So silly question, but for those at home watching, I haven't done any of the 5. Can I start tomorrow?
It's for anybody. You don't have to be an Exeter resident. It can be for anybody. Dogs can get a sticker if they do all the hikes, and it goes on forever. So if you want to do one a year, you can get it in 6 years. Or there was already some people on the Facebook page talking about, like, I bet we could do them all in one day. And so
Fastest known time.
So
Exeter
if you do want to connect to it, if you go to the town's website, which is exeternh.gov, and in the search bar type Hike Exeter, a whole page dedicated to that will come up. It'll have the all trails links as well as the maps and trail descriptions.
Yep, and apparently Travel in Nature, there's been a lot of people coming in there asking for the maps, so I'm gonna try and get some maps to give them, and nobody's been lost yet. So that's good.
Also good.
Congratulations, sounds like a
Great work.
success.
Yeah,
And that should definitely bump up the attendees tomorrow night, because it's,
Yeah, did we share the event at that forum?
yep, oh yeah.
oh.
There's actually, yeah, there's two events. One's like, I put on that page, and then Kristen did the official one from the,
Okay.
from.
A lot of those people are the same audience, so. it's,
Right.
You know,
Right.
it'll be good. Okay, any other committee reports?
I have a question. Wasn't there a trails committee at one time, or am I confused about that?
There was a while ago, yeah.
Yeah, like when I started, it was being mentioned about a year ago, but I haven't
Yeah.
heard anything about it since then.
Yeah, the trail, it's a subcommittee that is ad hoc that we,
And it gradually became more and more informal.
It's fully
That's a nice
informal
way to
now. I'm wondering if that's something that, or if it could be added back in, or what's the appropriate way to do that. There is a lot of interest. It's mainly centered in Fort Rock, as you know, but there's plenty of other trails too. Fort Rock, I would say on the Exeter side, needs attention, maintenance.
Oh, yeah.
That kind of thing, and maybe a little bit of oversight. I know that's not really something we can do exactly, but oversight in a public forest consists mostly of like signs and and
Well, no,
indicators.
you can do oversight. I mean, I've closed off many rogue trails over the years.
Yeah, well, that's part of it today.
Yeah. I mean,
These days.
If you see one, either do it yourself or let me know, I'll close it.
Oh, I've been battling braiders for years.
Yeah.
But
No, I mean, that's something, well, Keith likes trail, I mean, if you see stuff and you want to contact me, I'm more than happy to join you out there. And
Yeah?
yeah, and
Kyle's done a bunch of stuff.
right, and I see run into Kyle every now and then. And I know there was some interest. It kind of fizzled, I think, because nobody grabbed hold of it. I was thinking of trying to grab a hold of the interest, but shoring up some rock work, there's probably more I'm sure there's more discussion that would be needed about that and trail reroutes.
If you're merely doing maintenance and repair work of existing stuff, I'd say just knock yourself out and do it.
Yeah.
It's the new stuff that we always kind of got together as a group and walked around and.
Yeah, if you see something, do something.
Right.
That's what.
Yeah, one of the projects
Mantra.
that came up and has come up in discussion would be the Oakland's parking lot down to the trail system. Just, it needs more thought than I've given it about how it would be redone, but I would say water bars and larger stonework, if permissible, would make a huge difference there.
From the parking lot down the slope.
The first slope?
Yeah.
That first
Well,
slope?
I mean, I would ideally all the way to the wooden bridges, but that's an awful lot of work. But I mean, either over years or with several volunteer events, maybe once a year over the course of years.
Down by the bridges, it got really bad for a while.
And somebody must have.
Yeah, I did.
You did it?
Yeah.
Well, thanks.
So there, this kind of feeds into what Dan mentioned before. We do have very informal meetings, mostly with Toby, Dave, and I think Kyle, did you come? I think you came to the last one as well, talking about end of year, like expenses, what supplies of wood or, materials would be needed, but getting out a little bit ahead of that would really be so much better in terms of planning for budget season in the summer, not waiting until the end of the year to, to do a last dash purchase of wood so that we could kind of anticipate what those needs are and keep up with it on a more regular basis. And then
Kind of licked that problem of, at least as far as wood goes. I mean, we haven't bought wood in a long time.
Yeah, people have been donating.
It's either been
materials.
donated or a lot of salvage. We started, put the word out to, there's a lot of carpenters that ride and hike. And we put the word out, like if you're taking down an old deck and replacing
Yeah,
it,
decks and fences.
save the deck wood.
To buttress Christian's point, there's a lot of energy here, and a little bit of money could leverage that energy and take it a lot further.
Yes.
I would pick a meeting where you don't have deliberations.
Right.
And really dig in on what kind of work plan you want to put together for 2026 and what kind of money it would take. And we're not talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars here, but you obviously need to expand your budget a little bit and your budget requests.
Yep.
And just, put that work plan together, document it. And the Budget Recommendation Committee is going to be very receptive, and the Select Board will be very receptive as well.
And then,
Just a suggestion. I spent over 10 years building and maintaining trails in a different trail network, and I'm not a big fan of wood because it is inherently going to fail.
Oh, yeah.
And then you have nails and screws and stuff out in the woods often that is just thrown off to the side that is a hazard. I personally far prefer using natural materials. What I've done in the past is use road base. And the town usually has a stockpile of it somewhere. And some wheelbarrows, and you can harden a trail permanently a lot. It's more work, but it's something that's never going to fail.
Well, when you're talking wood, you're talking more trying to get out of wet areas. And we don't want to be filling those,
I understand that. I would avoid trying to put trails through those wet areas in the first place.
Well, I'm talking
Seasonally.
about,
Wet.
say, a side slope with a drainage stream coming down, or a low spot at the base of a hill or something like that, not trying to cross a swamp or something like that.
Well, you can use like a French drain. That's what I've done before. It all depends on how much water you're talking about. But, if it's just a simple drainage from the hillside that's not significant coming across the low point, you can dig a trench right there and you can fill it with reasonable sized stone, and the water will drain through there and not keep the whole area wet.
Yeah. There's not a lot of good digging places in Fort Worth.
I'm really familiar with the trail system. I'm out there every day. But, there's a lot of bridges, to speak to what somebody else said, there's a lot of bridges that are starting to fail out there right now.
Oh, yeah.
And I'd rather see a lot of those not be wood in the future, because I don't think they need to be, a lot of them that are currently failing, especially the ones closer to the trestle lot. I'm not sure what the name of the trail is, but if you go up the hill from the trestle lot and you go right, you cross one bridge and then you go up over,
they're
and then if you go left,
They're
there's
basically
another set
flush
of,
to the ground. Yeah.
those are really close to the ground, and at least in the couple dry years that we've had, there's been no water there at all.
Yeah.
Well, a trail subcommittee meeting may be a better forum for some of this discussion. And we can get Toby there. I mean, we've prioritized work that Toby was going to pursue with Fort Rock Riders and that crew.
Sounds like.
And then you would be an excellent addition to the trail subcommittee, particularly if you're interested in
It
helping
also,
out.
yes, I am interested in that. Whenever you have a trail system that comes close back to itself, you create opportunities for people to shortcut. There's one of those going on right now on down near down back there, and it's just like, I've kind of just lost interest in trying to fight that.
Yeah.
But that's what happens when you put trails too close to each other. You get a natural cut through.
Yeah. Well, that's part of the thing we keep fighting over there is, those rogue trails, not just because they're cut throughs, but the trails are just getting stacked right on top of each other.
Yeah.
And there's no point to it.
No. Density is definitely a thing to avoid if at all possible.
So I wasn't intending to kick off a whole long discussion now. I think that's
Anyway,
my bit of time anyway. But I think it'd be nice to try to harness. There's so much energy right now, especially, I know it's a whole subject, but with the Newfield stuff. But focusing on Exeter, there's still a lot of energy. Some of that latent energy is bound to go somewhere if we don't direct it. Other of it will just fizzle and disappear. And it's an opportunity, I think, to make sure that the trails don't become unsuitable in future years due to lack of maintenance, overuse, poor routing, whatever.
Right.
So I think if there's enough of a consensus, maybe we could have a portion of a meeting or a separate meeting or something to try to get Toby and other people.
Knock on wood, but what's next month looking like? It's not going to be too bad, is it? I mean, we hope, because we've had several consecutive months here.
I never know.
With big agenda items. You're the gatekeeper.
I don't know. We're not near the meeting deadline.
Yeah,
It's the
I
end of the
know.
month. There's a lot of February to go. I'm not ready
I guess-
to
Don't commit.
end February
Yeah, you're
today.
gonna jinx something, no matter what you.
I guess I'm being an optimist.
But, I would just add that, I kind of disagree with Dan, because I don't think we even need budget for this, because if we
Yeah.
just make a need known, then, it is mostly the mountain bikers, but they will get wood and screws and everything, and they will use their own funds to purchase it.
And manpower is not an issue.
But what they need is they need someone to say, hey, this is what needs to happen.
Right.
And then you're
right.
gonna have volunteers, you'll have more volunteers than you probably can.
Yeah, organizing the events, I think, is where, and saying what should be done and what should not be done is where, I think, where we can be
Right.
the most
Yeah.
mostly a conduit to that. Because I'm representing that group of people as are some others, but, I get worried about people just going off and doing their own thing because they get the wrong idea or frustrated or something. And I feel like if we just make it clear, like, do this, don't do that, and harness it,
Well,
it'll go in
maybe-
a good direction.
Maybe start, we can all start doing this, is start making either a mental or a physical list of
Yeah.
areas that you see that need to be addressed.
Yeah.
And let's put all that together then. Hopefully,
Yeah, agreed.
next meeting, if we have time, we'll try to do that. And then that will give us the ability to identify where we want to go.
Yeah, and maybe in the interest of time, we can bring that to one of these meetings. I'm not sure everybody wants to do the whole aggregation during this meeting, but
Yeah.
tell me if I'm wrong, but.
We
Anyway,
did
that's all I got.
We had a Trails Committee, but I don't know who headed it. It may have been,
I think it was you.
not me.
I organized one or two of those meetings, and I know Jay did before me.
Yeah, that's,
Yeah.
yeah,
So they've just been sporadic, but it's time for another one,
sure.
particularly given, the whole
To
road
dedicate
thing last
one
year.
to-
Yeah. All right. We've got some minutes to approve.
Sorry, I had two other items to bring up from the tree committee for other committee reports. One is they're hoping for an April to May timeframe to come here. They were hoping April, if there's not a whole lot of topic items, and if so, they'd boot to May. They are interested in giving a presentation to the Conservation Commission, just their annual progress and future plans. And then the last one Sally brought up, I think at the Stewardship Committee meeting, but it came up again today about potential tree planting at Rains at the top of the knoll where those benches are. And so just, I guess, we don't need to decide tonight, but if that's something the commission is amenable, she's willing to kind of think about species and plans.
I thought the guy that mowed was a little bit concerned about that knoll. 'cause
Yeah,
that-
he doesn't seem to be mowing it, though.
It's rocky.
Good.
It's very rocky.
Dan, forget. But I
Dan.
remember a couple of years ago, we were looking at doing a sustainable, not a, what do you?
ADA loop.
Yeah, up there, and he didn't want, and we wanted to put some cinders up there for the parking like you were thinking, and he wasn't too happy, but that's good, maybe he changed.
As long as there's still room for my cow statue.
My cow statue.
We are trying to expand the mowing area around the barn, so he will be missing a bale of hay probably, just so we have more usage around the barn.
Okay.
That we talked about that at the,
Well, it shows the barn off nice.
yeah, just keeping it,
Yeah.
like mow out to the drainage thing that got crushed
So
by
was
that
he
machine.
there?
No,
Or-
a lot of it doesn't get mowed, so,
Well, that's gonna get fixed.
yeah,
Okay.
it's, you know,
Is this something I need to communicate with
I
him?
would,
Is it
yeah.
a change in mowing?
Just gonna
Or-
expand that area a little bit, so
Well, no, you don't need to communicate anything.
right, you'll
Just when he
figure it
goes-
out when it's
When he goes there
mowed.
to hay it,
Yeah.
he's
He actually
just gonna
didn't
have
come
a...
that close to the barn, did he?
Yeah, that's-
No, it's not gonna, it's not a huge area, but it's just gonna be bigger than he's used to.
Okay.
He's not gonna lose...
it won't be noticeable to the
Yeah.
farmer, I don't think.
You could give him a heads up though and just say, hey.
All right. Is that it?
Good.
That's it for me.
Okay, because that's it for me. We have some minutes to approve from the 14th of January. Anybody have any comments to make on those? Anybody want to make a motion on those? I'll make a motion to approve the minutes as written from January 14th, or what did I say? Yeah, January 14th.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye.
Hi.
I'll abstain.
You won't be opposed this time?
I wasn't there.
6-1 with one abstention, approved. And then there's some minutes from your meeting too, Nick.
It was 6-0,
Sidewalk.
right? 6-0.
6-0.
6-0 with one abstention. You said 6-1.
That's right, I phrased that wrong.
Yeah.
Okay.
The second set of minutes were from the site walk at 76
So there's nothing to...
Portsmouth Ave. There's still minutes and need to be approved.
Oh, okay.
Wasn't there.
Are you moving that?
I wasn't there,
Oh.
but I can move it if you want.
Well,
But Keith and Trevor
Trevor
were there.
was.
And Bill.
So, was that a motion I heard, Trevor?
It was, yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, I moved to approve the,
Whoever else happened to be there?
I'll second Trevor's motion.
All those who were there,
Anyone
Aye.
can vote,
They
it's
vote.
fine. It doesn't,
can they?
yeah.
yeah.
There's no,
I thought you had to be in attendance.
no.
Oh, okay. No further discussion? All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passed unanimously. Does anybody have anything else?
2 items
There's
under
correspondence.
correspondence.
Oh, the dog letter, right?
Yep.
Okay. You want to?
Just a resident reached out with concerns over dogs using the, oh my gosh, sorry, the McDonald or Morissette? McDonald Conservation Area, and requested the Conservation Commission add. So we have a kiosk there, and the uses are identified on the kiosk, but there's no sign. I guess they attempted to put a sign, but it got taken down. And so, one, general concern about dogs on a property where dogs aren't permitted, and two, they wanted the Conservation Commission to consider a sign, a no dog sign.
Oh, because dogs aren't allowed there? Huh.
Right.
How much would that cost us? Speaking of money we don't have.
I could bring an estimate to the next meeting if you'd
That'd
like.
be a great idea.
Are you just wanting one on each end, or what are you thinking?
I forget what the signage there looks like. I know his letter said it was low and hard to see.
It's tipped up like a table, so if it gets snow on it, it covers some of it sometimes.
Is this something we can raise versus?
It's pretty small to start with. Maybe something on the post underneath saying,
I would say keep it inexpensive because it's more than likely going to get stolen or vandalized.
perhaps.
Or chewed up.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I don't think we need any more than one on each end. Like, we definitely don't need to put signs in the middle of the.
We can go to RJ's and get.
Yeah.
Is that in the deed? No dogs?
Yes.
Okay.
It's in the town ordinances.
Okay.
I don't know.
I think I asked about it before and you said it was.
Okay. Maybe for the conservation easement end, the McDonald conservation, the Linden Street end, but I don't think in the Perry it talked about dogs.
We could just allow dogs and then problem solved. No signs.
If there's nothing restricting it.
I'm happy to add this to the very growing March agenda. It sounds like we want to have a discuss, that's fine. Let's like have the documents in front of us
Okay.
before we make, okay.
Yeah.
And you said there was a second piece of correspondence?
So Ryan O'Brien submitted just words of thanks. I don't know if you want to just state them first, or do you want me to read it?
I can read it, that's fine. I have yours and Dan's now. I have to find it though, so bear with me here.
I think I have it up, if you want.
I'll say that I attended the window dressers, the window insert. Worked one morning over at the town hall. And it was really cool event. It's a ton of work that the energy committee, energy did to put it all together, and it's really neat.
So with the system they've got.
Yeah.
Because I went one afternoon.
You did, yeah.
And everything is like clockwork.
Oh yeah, it's cool.
So they're hoping to do it again next year if you're interested in participating. They're discussing the potential for another follow-up year, but they're looking for more volunteers to help organize the event because it's quite a bit of effort to pull it off.
Yeah.
Yeah, because there's like house visits.
Right.
That's involved.
So if you are interested or you know of a service organization that you think this is right up their alley, please send their contacts my way.
But I was kind of like, no, I should have gotten some. Damn.
I know. I feel that about this building, actually.
Well, they're not. It's a nice product too.
Yeah, it's really nice. It's cool.
I'm ready when you are.
Okay, sorry.
That's okay. I just feel like I've been doing a lot of complaining, and I hate feeling like that. And this morning I was out there snowshoeing with my dog, and it was just a wonderful experience, and it reminded me to say the following. Dear Conservation Commission, I just wanted to share with the board and Kristen how really nice it is to have a strong conservation presence, a well-established trail network, and a great town forest in Exeter. Monday through Friday, nearly every week, I start my day by driving my wife to work in Portsmouth, and then by adventuring in Exeter town forest with my dog Charlie. It is truly gratifying to be out in nature, enjoying everything Four Seasons has to offer, and how different the woods are from day to day and season to season. Thank you for being great stewards of Exeter's natural resources.
Ryan O'Brien.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
I think we might have had one more thing. I hate to.
Just keep it going. Keep it going, man.
So it was forwarded, it was sent to us, so the NHACC
You have to
email, the legislative email
Oh.
was forwarded.
Brain duct?
No, your name was on this one, so I'm just
It
bringing
was your
up.
idea, I
Yeah, it was
think.
your idea, Dave.
I'd forgotten about it.
I know, sorry, so I'm reminding you.
It's a good one, though.
Go ahead.
I don't have anything, you sent it to me.
So you were looking as to whether the
I just wanted people to look it over, and if they saw anything on there that they thought that as a commission we should comment on. Otherwise, it was just informational. That's all.
So, did everyone follow that? Did I share that?
You did?
Yes.
Oh,
did, yeah.
okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Are there any that you're following, Kristen?
There's a whole host. I feel
Yeah.
like every night I spend probably 2 hours submitting testimony, so it's just insane. Not all related to Conservation Commission stuff, so I wouldn't be able to point to any. It's a little too much information, but
Big
I wouldn't be able
question.
to point to any particular ones. I mean, NHACC does a great job at representing commissions, but, you know, it does not hurt. There's stuff about land use change tax. There's so many assaults right now. I'm just gonna stop.
All right, we got enough going on.
So we'll all take a look.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I will note some of those bills are being heard tomorrow, Wednesday, February 12th. Increased penalties for fish and game violations, prohibiting wanton waste and killing contests, using general funds up to $200K and authorizing an additional $1 fee for boat registration. Funds will be used for search and rescue. And relative to the duties of the Fish and Game Commission, advisory only. So those bills are all being heard tomorrow. So if anyone's free.
But you can submit online testimony. It takes 2 seconds, literally, to, you identify the date, you identify the committee, you identify the bill, and you say you're representing yourself and your position. And then you can add individual comments if you want. It takes 2 seconds. And it's getting a ton of attention because the State House is seeing an influx of comments unlike ever before.
Well, that education bill, I guess, is getting big comments.
Yep.
All right. Trevor, are you all set?
I'm done, man, thanks.
All right. Motion to adjourn at
9:37.
9:37.
Right on time.
Second.
Okay, no further discussion allowed. All those in favor?
Yes.
Aye. Pass.
Thank you for tuning in to Exeter TV. Exeter TV is the town's public and government access channels, available on Comcast Channels 6 and 22. Channel 6 is your channel. If you have an idea for a program, want to host your own talk show, or submit a film, we're here to get your content on television. On Channel 22, we bring you live and replay coverage of government meetings and other town updates. A third channel, Blue Hawk Media, is operated by SAU 16 and can be found on Channel 8, with all your school sports, events, and meetings. You can watch Exeter TV online at exeternh.tv, Apple TV, and on Roku. Find us on social media for extra content. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and hit the bell to get notified about live streams and new content. Tune in to our platforms every other Friday to watch the Exeter Biweekly Report, with recaps of recent events, updates from town departments, and messages from nonprofits in your area. If you head to our website, exeternh.tv, we invite you to sign up to our newsletter to receive monthly updates about new content, upcoming meetings, and more. We'd like to thank you for taking the time to watch Exeter TV and hope that you tune in to our other content as well.